So a little selfishly, I chose my favorite gospel story to use as my last sermon with you today. Now, I have to explain that a little bit, first of all, because you see, I have more than one favorite, so if I qualify, then I get to have, so I have a favorite Old Testament story, I have a favorite New Testament story, and I have a favorite gospel story. See, that way I get to have lots of favorites. Yeah, it's kind of like ice cream. Yeah, chocolate, strawberry. Okay, so my favorite Old Testament story is the story of Josiah. You'll have to look that one up yourself. My favorite New Testament story is the story of the Ethiopian that's baptized by Philip, right? But this story is my favorite gospel story, the story of the 4 friends. You may think that it's a story about the paralytic, but I actually think it's a story about the 4 friends. So in this story, we learn some very important things for community. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this story and all of these verses is, in fact, I think Hazel Dean already reminded me of this, that these were exactly the verses that were used at my installation service here 9.5 years ago. I'm sure you all remember that. So, as I look at this story, I want to think first about the historical context. So, somehow, the Old Testament led people to understand that if a person was ill, they probably deserved it, that it was their sin that gave them this illness. And because of that, they were untouchable. Untouchable. And so they even sometimes, people who had some sort of any kind of illness, deformity, anything different, they had to yell out, "Unclean, unclean," whenever people would come by. So much dignity they afforded people in that day and age. This man was definitely someone who would have been considered unclean. We don't have a name for him. We don't know if it was only paralyzed in his legs or if he was paralyzed from his neck down. We don't know what the story is for this man. We just know that there were 4 people who tried to carry him to Jesus. Now, our gospel doesn't even identify them as friends, but in my mind, they were. The other thing that historically the Old Testament taught people is that if somehow you did get in contact with an untouchable, you had to go through all kinds of stuff to be made clean again. All kinds of stuff. But for some reason, these 4 friends were willing to go and pick this man up by his mat and carry him to Jesus. Now, I think that says something about those 4 individuals who were willing to confront what seemed horrific to them about not being able to touch those in need. Probably the biggest lesson that I believe we ever get from Jesus is a call to compassion. And these 4 friends had compassion. They accompanied the man. They picked him up. They carried him. Now, mats in that day and age were just kind of woven together things that were kind of flimsy. I can't imagine how they accomplished this, but somehow they carried this man to Jesus. And can you imagine what must have happened when they get to the house and it's packed? There's no way to get in. They've risked all of this to get their friend to Jesus, their friend that they know needs to see Jesus. But that doesn't stop them. They go up those, usually there were steps on the outside of a house. They go up those steps. Can you imagine carrying their friend up the steps too? Up those steps, and they get onto that roof, and they somehow dig a hole in the roof. In the imagination or theater of my mind, I see Jesus standing there with all these people, and he's teaching them, and they're all quiet, listening, and suddenly some dust comes falling down. Can't you just see it? What's going on? And suddenly, a beam of light, and they look up, I love this picture because it's really focusing on the four friends, the picture of these four. And when Jesus sees their faith, he declares the man's sins forgiven. He nullifies that Old Testament concern about sin causing illness. He throws it away. He sees their faith and makes him well. In the Old Testament, way back in Genesis, it's after Cain kills Abel, that God says, "Where's your brother?" And Cain says, "I don't know. What am I, my brother's keeper?" And we all know that he was lying because we've read the first part of the story. He's the one who does his brother in. So we know that Cain knows where Abel is. So we know that's a lie. Yes, we are our brother's keeper. We are. I could just sit down right now and weep for the world, weep for Dallas, for Florida, for all the world where all these horribly sad events are going on. The world needs to learn that word, compassion. The world needs it. But we can start. We as faithful followers of Jesus can start. And here's the thing. In the face of everyone that you meet, no matter their color, their occupation, their age, no matter what, their sexual orientation, no matter what, find Jesus in their face. And then you will know compassion. If you can look at the whole world and see Jesus, you can live into the love that Jesus calls us to. In all the years that I've been here with you, there are many times where I've been at a bedside or I've been at a great celebration, and we have been together carrying someone. As we gather today for this great celebration, I thank you as well for carrying me to Jesus. Amen.